Imagine, just for a second, the absolute terror of the sun setting over the ancient Egyptian horizon. The sky darkens, the light vanishes, and boom, the ultimate cosmic crisis begins. Every single night, the sun god, Ra, essentially dies in the west. He then has to undertake this insanely perilous journey through a pitch-black underworld just to earn his rebirth the next morning. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the ultimate ancient survival guide for this epic journey, the Amduat. Okay, let's dive into this. The ancient Egyptians were deeply, almost obsessively concerned with what actually happens to the sun after it disappears in the west. And, their logic was simple but really profound. If the mighty sun god Ra has to navigate a terrifying realm of death just to be reborn, then a recently deceased pharaoh should absolutely try to hitch a ride. The thinking was that by joining Ra in the dark, the pharaoh could tap into that same regenerative magic and secure their own eternal life. But as you can probably guess, to survive a journey like that, the pharaoh was going to need a map. Well, that map is the Amduat. The word itself translates to that which is in the afterworld, though the ancient Egyptians also affectionately called it the text of the hidden chamber. And the Duat, that's just the Egyptian word for the underworld itself. Now, this originated back in the New Kingdom of Egypt, and let me tell you, it was a highly exclusive VIP funerary text. In the early days, you couldn't just go out and get one. It was reserved almost entirely for pharaohs and a very select few nobles, and it was carved directly onto the internal walls of their tombs. It served as a literal physical map and a survival guide, listing out all the friends, the terrifying foes, and the incredibly bizarre topography of the underworld. To really grasp how this guide works, you have to look at its brilliant visual structure. When you stand inside one of these tombs, the Amduat is laid out in 3 continuous horizontal bands, or registers. The middle register is basically the main highway. That's where Ra travels on his solar bark, or his boat. The top register shows all the various, often creepy creatures and gods that just sort of live in the underworld, and the bottom register gives you extra pictorial details about whatever specific region they're passing through. And the whole thing is sliced vertically into the 12 hours of the night, complete with the names of these heavily guarded gateways that Ra literally has to pass through. All right, let's track Ra's initial descent into the Duat through the first 4 hours. In hour 1, Ra enters from the western horizon. That's the transition from day to night. By hour 2, he's officially in the underworld, floating along the primeval waters of Nun, in a region they called Awareness. But things get really strange in hour 3. Ra is suddenly nowhere to be seen on his boat. Instead, the text tells us his soul has actually been split across 4 separate boats. And as he moves deeper into hour 4, the environment around him starts to drastically and terrifyingly change. The Egyptian underworld is famously a place of stark opposites. The transition from hour 2 to hour 4 illustrates this perfectly. On the one hand, you have the waters of Awareness early on, which are lush and represent fertility, agriculture, and life. But by hour 4, Ra hits Imhet, the desert land of the hawk deity Sokar. The life-giving waters just completely dry up. Boom, gone. Ra is now deep in a barren, waterless desert of death. He's so far removed from his own light that he is completely blind and has to rely solely on his voice to guide his crew through the dark. Which, of course, brings up a massive, obvious logistical problem for our sun god. How exactly does a boat travel when there is no water and absolutely no light? Ra's solar bark is totally stranded in a pitch-black, zigzagging wasteland of sand. The path ahead is blocked by massive doors, and the physical environment is just incredibly hostile. The narrative tension right here is immense. I mean, think about it. If Ra gets stuck in the sand, the sun never rises again, and the universe essentially ends. No pressure, right? Now, what's really interesting here is the bizarre and frankly awesome magic Ra uses to survive. Since there's 0 water to float on, the solar bark literally transforms into a double-headed, fire-breathing serpent. I know, it's wild. This snake form provides that slithering motion they desperately need to get across the sand. And the flames shooting out of the serpent's mouths, that provides the absolute only light in this crushing darkness. And that bizarre snake boat brings us right into hour 5, where life literally meets death. The harsh land of Sokar continues, and let me tell you, it is a tight squeeze. The serpent boat actually has to be physically yanked by friendly deities through this impossibly narrow passageway. At the bottom of this area, there's an oval shape that represents the cavern of Sokar. Inside it sits the hawk god Sokar himself, completely surrounded and trapped by a terrifying lake of fire. Yet, and this is key, Just above this intense scene of death, you can see the scarab god Khepri crawling right out of a burial mound. It's this vital, beautiful promise of the rebirth that's yet to come. So we have officially reached the climax of the Amduat. Hours 5 through 8 are the absolute turning point of the entire text. We're talking right around the stroke of midnight in the Underworld. The entire fate of the universe is hanging by a thread here. Ra has managed to make it through the desert, sure, but he is separated from his physical form and he is incredibly vulnerable. Then we hit hour 6, which is hands down the most significant event in the entire Underworld. Now, throughout this text, Ra is actually depicted with a ram's head. It's a neat visual pun because the Egyptian word for soul, which is Ba, shares a hieroglyph with the ram. So here, Ra's ram-headed soul finally reunites with his physical body, which is shown in the form of Osiris, the god of the afterlife. This vital reunion of the soul and the physical body sparks this massive, incredible regenerative power. A sun disk crown suddenly appears on Ra's head. His light has been renewed. But, and there's always a but, regenerating the literal light of the sun is incredibly dangerous in the dark because it acts like a beacon for the ultimate forces of evil. Enter Hour 7, the ultimate boss battle. This hour introduces Apep. Apep is this monstrous chaos serpent whose one and only goal is to stop the sun from rising. Apep tries to pull this off by swallowing all the primeval waters of noon, attempting to strand Ra's boat all over again. It's literally only through the powerful defensive magic spells of the goddess Isis that the boat manages to keep moving over the dry riverbed, narrowly avoiding universal destruction. Having barely survived Apep, Ra finally begins the grueling push back up to the surface. Hours 9 through 12 represent the ascent. Ra's eyes are fully healed now, and he's survived the absolute worst of the duet. But the journey is not over. He actually requires 12 oarsmen to help pull his solar boat up towards the light of the living world. And by hour 10, these oarsmen are fully armed to the teeth to protect him against any lingering enemies lurking in the shadows. So the crucial point is that the Amduat isn't just about cosmic gods fighting giant snakes. It actually has deeply human, emotional elements too. While the armed oarsmen are busy protecting Ra, notice how the sky god Horus makes a really powerful intervention. Down in the lower register, Horus is seen pulling the bodies of drowned souls to the shore. Now, in ancient Egypt, the belief was that without a proper burial, your soul was just lost forever. So this scene offers a deeply comforting message to the living. Even those who suffered tragic deaths at sea and missed out on traditional funerary rites, they can still be saved by the gods. Finally, we get to the grand finale. Hour 12 marks the triumphant end of this massive mythological journey. The sun god reaches the eastern horizon and transforms into Khepri, the scarab beetle, which perfectly represents the newly risen morning sun. He is led out of the underworld by a whole parade of deities, and the cycle of Mat, which is the ancient Egyptian concept of truth, balance, and universal order, is successfully restored for another day. We made it! And this brilliantly illustrates how the ancient Egyptians didn't just passively read this myth on papyrus, they quite literally built it. To see how this text was applied in real life, we just have to look at tomb KV34. This is the final resting place of the great pharaoh Thutmose III, located in the Valley of the Kings. His tomb is this remarkably preserved example of how the Amduat was meant to be physically and pictorially represented in the real world. Let's actually walk through the physical descent into the earth. The layout of Thutmose III's subterranean monument isn't just some random architectural blueprint. As you move from the entrance corridors, down into a deep well shaft, through the antechamber, and finally step into the oval burial chamber, the architecture is purposefully mirroring the structure of the Amduat, step by step. The pharaoh's tomb was explicitly designed to be a physical stone replica of the underworld. The renowned Egyptologist Josh Robertson describes this specific architectural design as the curved and bent axe style. So instead of a simple, straight hallway, the tomb purposefully slopes downward and winds around in a really bent, confusing shape. Historians theorize that this intentionally recreates that confusing, labyrinthian, and highly dangerous geography that Ra just had to navigate in the text. The pharaoh literally wanted his own soul's physical journey to perfectly match the sun god's perilous path. When you compare the mythological cycle to the physical tomb itself, the parallels are just stunning. The painted hours on the walls begin in the west, and they intentionally finish on the east side of the room, exactly mimicking an actual sunrise. But even more fascinating is the room's shape itself. The burial chamber has rounded corners. It's an oval. This perfectly mirrors that oval-shaped cavern of Sokar from Hour 6 we talked about, the exact place where that ultimate regenerative magic happens. The utmost third even went as far as having an oval sarcophagus carved in the shape of a royal cartouche, just to make absolutely sure he was directly channeling that rebirth magic. Ultimately, the legacy of the Amduat is a fascinating story of evolving accessibility. It started out as this highly restricted, top-secret guidebook, originally exclusive only to New Kingdom pharaohs and maybe an extremely select few like Thutmose III's top advisor. But later on, in the Ramesside period, it started appearing alongside other texts like the Book of Gates, and eventually, by the end of the New Kingdom, it lost that strict royal exclusivity entirely. It began showing up on the everyday coffins and papyri of non-royals. It transitioned from a king's secret weapon into a widespread, beautiful, enduring symbol of the eternal human hope for life after death. The Amduat reminds us that the ancient Egyptians viewed death not as some final, quiet end, but as a deeply dangerous, active journey, one that required knowledge, incredible courage, and a little bit of magic to survive. It really makes you think about the obstacles we face in our own lives before we can find our own new dawn. So I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder today. If you were the one descending into the terrifying pitch-black underworld tonight, which of the 12 hours would you fear the most?